Welcome to Zoe Stories. Help! I'm 8 weeks pregnant, but I was a man. I never imagined my life would twist like this. Just a few months ago, I was living a quiet, predictable existence, working long hours as a software developer, spending evenings alone or gaming, and occasionally experimenting with cross-dressing in the privacy of my apartment. It wasn't something I did for attention, nor was it a hobby I broadcasted. It was my secret, a private exploration of an identity I was only beginning to understand. My name is Alex, and for years I had juggled two versions of myself. By day, I was the composed, somewhat introverted guy everyone expected me to be. By night, I explored a more feminine side, testing outfits, makeup, and the feel of high heels on my feet. I had always been careful, meticulous even, making sure no one, especially Ava, noticed. She was my girlfriend, my anchor, my world, and I didn't want to risk our relationship with a revelation I didn't fully understand myself. Ava had been part of my life for 3 years. She was charismatic, outgoing, and deeply empathetic, but also had this sharp intuition that made it nearly impossible to hide anything from her. We lived together in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in the city, a home filled with laughter, arguments over trivial things, and quiet nights spent together on the couch. Ava had always been supportive, but I had never tested her boundaries with my cross-dressing. I wasn't sure she would understand or accept the full truth. That morning had started like any other. I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through my emails, wearing a casual t-shirt and jeans, when a small, unassuming envelope slid under the door. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was junk mail. But curiosity got the better of me, and I picked it up. Inside was a small vial of pills, neatly labeled, for gender transition support. Follow instructions carefully. There was no note, no explanation, just the pills. I laughed nervously to myself. A prank? A delivery mistake? But before I could discard them, I found myself staring at them longer than I should have. Something about their presence sparked a strange curiosity. Could they accelerate the subtle changes I had always hoped for when cross-dressing? Could they let me fully inhabit the feminine identity I had only explored in private? It was a foolish thought, I knew. I had never taken any hormone treatments, never experimented beyond the occasional outfit or makeup session. Yet the idea lingered in my mind like a whisper, persistent and compelling. I didn't take them immediately, but the seed had been planted. That night, curiosity overtook caution. Alone in our apartment while Ava was out visiting her sister, I carefully read the instructions and swallowed one pill. The effect was subtle at first, a warmth spreading through my body, a strange lightness in my limbs, and an unexplainable shift in my posture and movement. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and froze. My features, already soft from genetics, seemed slightly altered, more delicate, more feminine. I felt a thrill run through me, coupled with a pang of fear. Over the next few weeks, I continued cautiously. The changes were gradual but undeniable. My skin softened, my voice subtly shifted, my body began to feel different in ways that were both exhilarating and terrifying. Ava never suspected a thing. She would joke about me looking healthier or happier, blissfully unaware of the hidden transformation unfolding within me. Then came the day I noticed the most unexpected sign, a missed period. I laughed nervously at first. How could that even be possible? I had never imagined a scenario where a man could experience pregnancy, and yet here I was, feeling nauseous and fatigued in ways I couldn't ignore. A home pregnancy test confirmed the impossible. Positive. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the 2 pink lines, heart racing and mind spiraling. How could this happen? What did it mean? And most importantly, how could I tell Ava without losing everything? The apartment was silent, the only sounds my shaky breathing and the faint hum of the city outside. I had crossed the threshold into a reality I had never anticipated. My secret life, my feminine identity, and now this impossible pregnancy collided into one overwhelming storm. I felt a mix of fear, excitement, and a strange sense of inevitability. Ava walked in a few minutes later, her eyes lighting up as she saw me. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked casually, unaware of the life-altering secret I now carried. I nodded, forcing a smile, hiding the panic and the impossible truth. I didn't know how long I could keep it a secret, but one thing was certain. My life was about to change forever, and nothing, not my identity, my relationship, nor the world as I knew it, would ever be the same. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. There was a subtle heaviness in my chest, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. My body had begun to betray me, reshaping itself in ways I couldn't explain or control. The reflection in the mirror showed a version of me that was unfamiliar, softer jawline, slightly fuller hips, and a faint curve where none had been. I reached for the small journal I had started keeping, a habit from my early cross-dressing days. I wrote down every subtle change, the shift in my balance, the way my clothes fit differently, the growing awareness of my body in space. Writing helped me process the emotions swirling inside, excitement, fear, and an undeniable sense of anticipation. Ava noticed my restlessness almost immediately. She came into the kitchen, a bright smile on her face, and handed me a cup of coffee. "You've been distracted," she said gently. I laughed nervously, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Just tired," I said. "Work's been busy." But the truth was far more complicated. Each day brought new changes. My waistline softened, my chest developed subtle curves, and strange waves of nausea reminded me of the impossible reality I faced. I was 8 weeks pregnant. I couldn't explain it, I couldn't rationalize it, and I definitely couldn't tell Ava, not yet. I began experimenting with clothing again, this time more carefully. Dresses that once felt daring now seemed essential, concealing my growing body while allowing me to explore my new form. High heels, tights, and soft fabrics became my armor. I reveled in the sensation of silk brushing against my skin, the careful adjustment of a bra under my t-shirt, the way makeup could accentuate features that were slowly evolving. Each transformation was a thrill, but it came with a gnawing fear. Ava's presence made it harder to hide. She was intuitive, her questions casual but probing. "Are you feeling okay today?" Or, "You've been staring at yourself a lot lately." I laughed off each comment, deflecting with jokes or quick distractions. Inside, my anxiety was mounting. What if she noticed the subtle changes in my body? What if she realized the impossible truth before I was ready to tell her? Work offered no escape. Sitting at my desk, I caught glimpses of myself in reflective surfaces, the bathroom mirror, a computer screen, a shiny coffee cup, and each reflection reminded me of the impossible situation I was in. My colleagues noticed subtle differences too. My posture, the softness in my features, the slightly higher-pitched voice I hadn't realized was changing. I had to navigate daily interactions with extreme caution, ensuring no one suspected the transformation that was reshaping my life. At home, I faced another challenge, preparing for Ava's sister's upcoming visit. Lily had always been a spirited, observant person, and the thought of her noticing even a subtle change made my stomach twist. I rehearsed explanations in my mind, considered diversion tactics, and even contemplated locking myself in the bedroom during her visit. The suspense was relentless. One evening, alone in the apartment while Ava was at work, I allowed myself to fully explore the transformation. I tried on a silky dress that hugged my body, applied makeup carefully, and adjusted a wig I had recently purchased. The reflection in the mirror was shocking. I saw someone who was both me and not me, a version of myself I had never imagined. The growing belly, a faint curve but undeniable, caught my attention. I placed my hand gently on it, a mixture of awe and terror coursing through me. I whispered to myself, "How did this happen? How is this even possible?" The reflection stared back, indifferent to the impossibility, demanding acknowledgement. My mind raced, considering every possibility, every consequence, every potential reaction from Ava and the people around me. The night deepened, and the apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I realized that I was living a dual existence, the man I had been, the woman I was becoming, and the pregnant version that defied reality. The thrill of cross-dressing had merged with the existential fear of being discovered, creating a suspenseful tension that left me both exhilarated and terrified. I carefully documented my feelings, noting every sensation, every emotional spike, every physical change. The journal had become a lifeline, a way to maintain some sense of control amidst the chaos. Each page was a testament to my transformation, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. By the time Ava returned home, I had tucked away the dress, removed the wig, and attempted to assume my normal self. My pulse was still racing, and my mind was consumed with worry. I greeted her with a smile, careful not to betray the secret that was growing inside me. "Hey, long day," she asked, handing me a cup of tea. I nodded, trying to sound casual, though the memory of my reflection lingered. The suspense of hiding the pregnancy, combined with the thrill of my evolving identity, made every interaction charged with tension. Every glance, every touch, every word became a potential test of secrecy and survival. As we settled on the couch, Ava resting her head on my shoulder, I felt the undeniable truth. My life was changing faster than I could control. The pregnancy, the transformation, the evolving identity, they were all colliding into a perfect storm of suspense, emotional drama, and vulnerability. I realized that the coming weeks would be a series of trials, hiding the pregnancy, navigating the changes in my body, managing Ava's intuition, and confronting the impossible reality of being a man-turned-pregnant woman. Every day was a high-stakes balancing act, a suspenseful dance that left my heart pounding and my mind spinning. And deep down, I knew one thing. The journey had only just begun. Days turned into weeks, and the subtle changes in my body became impossible to ignore. The one small bump at my abdomen had started to show more clearly under my clothes, and I found myself instinctively adjusting shirts and sweaters to hide it. Even at home, the thought of Ava noticing the growing proof of my impossible pregnancy made me anxious. I began timing my cross-dressing sessions to coincide with the times Ava was out. Alone in the apartment, I experimented with new outfits that accentuated my curves, feeling a mixture of thrill and vulnerability. Each session was a delicate dance, high heels clicking softly against the hardwood floors, the soft fabric of skirts brushing against my thighs, the tight embrace of shapewear creating a silhouette that was both familiar and alien. The physical changes were only part of the struggle. Emotionally, I was becoming more sensitive, more reactive, and more aware of the nuances of my surroundings. Small gestures, casual comments, or even fleeting glances from Ava could send my heart racing. The pregnancy hormones seemed to amplify every emotion, every fear, every thrill of my secret life. One evening, while preparing dinner, I noticed my reflection in the oven's metallic surface. I froze. The figure staring back at me was undeniably feminine, and the growing curve of my abdomen was impossible to ignore. My chest, fuller and softer, moved subtly as I breathed. I ran my hands over the changes, feeling a strange combination of pride, disbelief, and fear. I thought about how to manage the secret. I couldn't go to a doctor alone. How could I explain that a man was pregnant? How could I maintain the illusion while ensuring my health and safety? The stakes were mounting with every passing day, and the tension was becoming almost unbearable. Ava, ever perceptive, started asking questions. "You seem tired more often," she said one night, concern flickering in her eyes. "Are you feeling okay?" I smiled, brushing it off. "Just a little stressed at work," I said, avoiding her gaze. The lie felt thin, fragile, like it could shatter with the slightest pressure. I began keeping a more detailed journal of my experiences. Every flutter, every cramp, every emotional spike was meticulously noted. It became both a diary and a strategy guide, a way to anticipate my body's reactions and plan how to hide them. The suspense was compounded by Ava's increasing involvement in our daily routines. She started planning weekend trips, social visits, and even casual outings with friends, all of which required me to appear normal. I felt trapped between the desire to embrace my new identity and the need to conceal the impossible truth. Each outing became a test of my ingenuity, a high-stakes challenge that left my pulse racing and my mind spinning. I also noticed subtle reactions from others. People at work seemed to glance a bit longer, their tone just slightly altered when speaking to me. I couldn't tell if it was intuition, suspicion, or simply my imagination amplified by stress and hormones. The uncertainty added a constant layer of suspense, making even mundane interactions feel charged with potential revelation. At night, I spent hours practicing walking in heels, adjusting makeup, and refining the way I carried myself. The mirror became both a confidant and a judge, reflecting not only my physical transformation but also my emotional state. I would study the curves of my body, the changes in my voice, the way I moved, asking myself, could I keep this secret forever? Should I even try? Despite the growing fear, there was a strange thrill in the duality of my life. The private exploration of femininity, combined with the impossible pregnancy, created a tension that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I felt alive in ways I had never experienced before, even as the pressure of secrecy threatened to consume me. And then came the first close call. Ava had returned home early from work one afternoon, her keys jingling in the hallway. I had been in the bedroom, fully dressed in a soft pink dress that hugged my curves, makeup applied perfectly, and hair styled in a delicate wave. My heart stopped. I pressed myself against the wall, praying she wouldn't see. She entered the room, humming, and my pulse raced. I held my breath as she passed the doorway, glancing briefly in my direction. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. She didn't notice, and I exhaled slowly, the adrenaline leaving my body in a shuddering wave. That near exposure left me shaken. I realized that the suspense wasn't just about hiding my pregnancy, it was about maintaining the delicate balance between the life I had lived and the life I was becoming. Every decision, every movement, every gesture mattered now. The thrill of cross-dressing had merged with the terror of being discovered, creating a suspenseful tension that made every day feel like walking a tightrope. By the end of that week, I had accepted one undeniable truth. Nothing would ever be the same. The pregnancy, the physical transformation, and the emotional evolution had pushed me into uncharted territory. I was no longer simply Alex, the cautious crossdresser. I was Alex, the man-turned-pregnant woman, navigating a world that didn't yet understand me, and perhaps never would. The suspense was relentless, the stakes higher than ever, and the secret life I was leading teetered on the edge of exposure. Every day, every interaction, every glance held the potential for revelation, for judgment, for a life-altering confrontation that could change everything. And yet, beneath the fear, a quiet determination had taken root. I would navigate this impossible journey, face the challenges ahead, and explore the boundaries of identity, transformation, and resilience. But the question remained, how long could I keep this impossible secret before the world, or Ava, caught up with me? The days seemed to move faster now, every moment a precarious balance between my growing secret and the outside world. My reflection had become both a comfort and a torment. Each morning, I studied the subtle changes in my body, a softening of my jaw, a gentle swell in my chest, the undeniable curve of my abdomen. The journal I kept had grown thicker, filled with meticulous notes about sensations, moods, and physical changes. Ava's intuition was sharper than ever. She asked more questions, her gaze lingering a fraction too long. "You're quieter than usual," she said one evening, sitting beside me on the couch. I smiled, trying to deflect, but my heart was pounding. Every word, every glance felt loaded with potential exposure. At home, I experimented further with clothing, makeup, and styling. The silky dresses, form-fitting skirts, and delicate accessories became both armor and temptation. I loved the way they emphasized my new curves, the thrill of feeling feminine in secret. But each session also reminded me of how fragile my concealment was. One misplaced step, one dropped piece of jewelry, and Ava, or someone else, could discover everything. The suspense escalated when Ava invited her coworker, Melissa, Over for dinner. Melissa had always been sharp, observant, and impossibly nosy. I had only a few hours to ensure my secret remained hidden. I carefully rehearsed my movements, double-checked my wardrobe, and avoided the heavier clothes that revealed my abdomen too clearly. During the dinner, Melissa's eyes darted to me more than once. I felt exposed, as if every gesture, every word, every laugh could betray the impossible truth. My hands trembled slightly under the table as I sipped my drink, trying to maintain composure. Ava, oblivious, chatted casually, while I was hyper-aware of the precarious tightrope I was walking. Later that night, I locked myself in the bathroom and removed my wig and makeup, staring at the reflection that had become both familiar and alien. The pregnancy had advanced in ways I couldn't ignore. My abdomen was more pronounced, and my body seemed to demand recognition. I touched my stomach gently, feeling the small but undeniable weight of life growing inside me. A sudden thought terrified me. What if Ava discovered the pregnancy before I was ready? What if she misinterpreted the signs or, worse, didn't believe me at all? Anxiety clawed at me, leaving me breathless. I realized that hiding this secret was no longer just about my identity. It was about control, about survival, about navigating a reality that had no precedent. I started practicing my speech, preparing for the moment I might have to explain myself. I rehearsed ways to describe the impossible, to make it plausible, to convey the reality without triggering disbelief or panic. The exercise was both exhausting and oddly empowering, giving me a sense of readiness for the inevitable confrontation. Sleep became difficult. Each night, I lay awake imagining scenarios. Ava walking in on me dressed in a form-fitting dress, someone noticing the subtle swell of my abdomen, my voice changing unexpectedly. The suspense was relentless, a constant pressure that made each day feel like walking through a minefield. One afternoon, while alone at home, I felt a sudden wave of nausea. My hand went instinctively to my stomach. The physical sensations were undeniable. The changes were progressing faster than I had anticipated. Panic surged through me, a reminder that my secret life was no longer just a private thrill but a tangible, irreversible reality. I glanced at the mirror, my reflection staring back with a mixture of vulnerability and defiance. The pregnancy, the cross-dressing, the evolving identity, they had merged into a complex, beautiful, and terrifying whole. I was no longer just hiding a secret. I was living it, experiencing it in every sense of the word. That evening, Ava returned home early again. I was in the middle of adjusting a dress that emphasized my curves, the reflection in the mirror almost daring me to be seen. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. She entered the apartment, humming, and for a moment, the world seemed to slow. I held my pose, heart hammering, waiting for her to notice. She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing slightly, then moved past unaware. Relief and terror collided inside me. The close call reinforced the stakes. I had to be more careful, more vigilant, more strategic in navigating my dual life. By the end of the week, I felt the weight of the secret pressing down on me more than ever. The pregnancy had made my body both a source of power and vulnerability, a tangible manifestation of the impossible reality I was living. Every interaction, every glance, every movement was now fraught with suspense. I realized that the coming days would require ingenuity, courage, and perhaps a bit of luck. The thrill of cross-dressing, once a private indulgence, had now merged with the life-altering reality of pregnancy. The tension was unrelenting, the stakes impossibly high, and the journey far from over. And yet, despite the fear, a quiet determination had taken hold. I would continue to navigate this impossible transformation, to embrace my evolving identity, and to survive the suspenseful, high-stakes dance that had become my life. The apartment felt smaller now, every corner and mirror a potential witness to my secret. The pregnancy had progressed faster than I had anticipated, and hiding it had become an intricate game of strategy, timing, and constant vigilance. Every piece of clothing, every gesture, every shadow could betray the truth I was living. Ava's intuition seemed to sharpen with each passing day. She noticed little things: the way I moved, the soft curve of my belly, the slightly higher pitch in my voice. She asked casual questions, seemingly innocent but loaded with subtle probing. "Are you sure you're not overworking yourself?" she said one evening. My pulse raced, my mind scrambling for a believable answer. "Yeah, just tired from stuff," I muttered, hoping the vagueness would suffice. The thrill and fear were merging into a heady cocktail. Alone in my room, I experimented with outfits that showcased my curves in private: the silky dresses, the form-fitting skirts, the delicate accessories that made me feel both powerful and vulnerable. High heels clicked softly against the hardwood floors as I practiced walking, each step a delicate balance, both literally and metaphorically. One afternoon, while preparing for Ava's arrival, I felt a sudden cramp in my abdomen. I froze, panic rising as I pressed a hand to my stomach. The sensation was unmistakable, a reminder that this pregnancy was real, that my body had irrevocably changed. I took deep breaths, trying to steady my racing heart, but the thought of Ava walking in and discovering everything made my palms sweat. The suspense intensified when Ava mentioned hosting a small gathering for her colleagues the following evening. The thought of other people seeing me or sensing something unusual filled me with dread. I meticulously planned my outfit, my posture, my movements. Every detail mattered. Every decision carried weight. That night, I practiced my persona in front of the mirror. I adjusted my wig, smoothed my makeup, and examined the gentle curve of my abdomen under the fitted dress. The reflection staring back at me was undeniably feminine, undeniably pregnant, and undeniably impossible. I ran my hands over the soft contours of my body, feeling both pride and fear. The next day, the gathering began. Ava's friends arrived, their laughter and conversation filling the apartment. I moved through the room with practiced ease, careful to maintain balance in heels and keep my gestures natural. Every smile, every nod, every word was calculated to avoid suspicion. Yet, despite my vigilance, subtle signs began to show. A glance too long, a question slightly off, a misplaced item, all became potential triggers for exposure. The suspense was nearly unbearable, a constant hum in the back of my mind, reminding me that one wrong move could shatter everything. As the evening wore on, I felt the pregnancy's physical effects more acutely. Fatigue, mild nausea, and hormonal surges made it increasingly difficult to maintain composure. I retreated briefly to the bathroom, pressing a hand to my stomach, my reflection a silent witness to the impossible transformation. When I returned to the gathering, I noticed Ava's eyes lingering on me, a subtle curiosity in her expression. My heart pounded in my chest. Was she suspicious? Could she sense the secret I had worked so hard to conceal? I forced a smile, hoping it masked the storm of fear and excitement within. Later, alone in the quiet of the apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hands over my body. The pregnancy, the cross-dressing, the duality of my existence, it was all converging into a complex, high-stakes reality. Every movement, every breath, every thought felt weighted with suspense. I realized that the secret was no longer just about hiding my identity. It had become a test of endurance, of cleverness, of navigating a reality that defied all logic. The emotional stakes were higher than ever, the thrill of transformation intertwined with the constant fear of discovery. The night ended with me lying awake, heart racing, mind spinning. The apartment was silent, but the tension lingered, a palpable presence that reminded me that this was only the beginning. The pregnancy was advancing, the suspense was escalating, and the next steps, however impossible, would demand courage, cunning, and resilience. As I drifted toward an uneasy sleep, I knew one thing for certain. The dual life I was leading had become more than a secret. It had become my reality, my identity, and my greatest challenge. And the stakes? Higher than ever. The tension had reached a breaking point. Each day, every interaction, every step I took felt like walking a tightrope stretched across a canyon. The pregnancy had progressed rapidly, my body now undeniably changed. Hiding it had become a battle not just of deception but of endurance, both physical and emotional. That morning, I awoke to an unexpected sound, the front door clicking open. Ava had returned early from work. My heart skipped several beats. Panic surged as I scrambled to adjust my dress, reposition my wig, and smooth the subtle contours of my abdomen. The apartment, normally a sanctuary for my secret, now felt like a trap. She called out casually, unaware of my internal chaos. I forced a calm smile, even as my mind raced. "Hey, you're home early," I said, my voice slightly higher than usual, a delicate tremor betraying my nerves. Ava's eyes scanned me from head to toe. For a terrifying moment, I thought she might see through the carefully constructed facade. My pulse pounded in my ears as she paused, her gaze lingering on the curve of my belly. "I just finished early," she said, though her tone held a note of suspicion. I nodded, trying to appear relaxed, and shifted slightly to mask the swelling. Each movement was deliberate, calculated to maintain my secret while navigating the growing physical changes that were impossible to conceal completely. Then the phone rang. It was Ava's coworker, the one from last week. She had forgotten an important document and wanted to swing by immediately. My stomach twisted. The thought of someone else seeing me, or worse, suspecting something, sent a cold wave of fear through my body. Ava, oblivious, agreed to let her come over. "It'll only take a few minutes," she said cheerfully. I was left alone, the seconds stretching into an eternity. I checked the mirror in the hallway, adjusting my wig and smoothing the dress over my belly. My reflection stared back with a mixture of defiance and vulnerability. Every fiber of my being screamed that exposure was imminent. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. My heart raced as I moved to open the door, heels clicking against the floor. Melissa stepped in, smiling, completely unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I greeted her, voice steady, but my mind whirling. "Thanks for letting me in," she said, glancing around. Her eyes flicked toward me for a heartbeat too long. I felt my pulse spike. One wrong gesture, one shift of posture, and the illusion would crumble. Ava called from the kitchen, leaving us alone for a moment. I felt the weight of suspense pressing down like a physical force. Melissa leaned slightly closer, asking about a document, but her gaze lingered. I offered a forced smile, praying it was convincing. Suddenly, a sharp cramp twisted my abdomen. I froze, pressing a hand against my stomach. Melissa noticed immediately. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern in her tone. I forced a laugh, brushing it off. "Yeah, just tired," I muttered, my voice a touch higher than normal. Every word was a risk, every movement a potential reveal. Melissa's brow furrowed slightly, and I knew I had only moments to regain control. I excused myself briefly, retreating to the bathroom to steady my breathing. The mirror reflected the impossible reality, the swollen belly, the feminized features, the delicate curves, all undeniable. I touched my stomach gently, feeling the life within, the secret that was no longer just hidden but dangerously close to discovery. Returning to the living room, I tried to maintain composure, but the cramp had left me shaken. Every smile, every nod, every word was now layered with tension. Melissa chatted casually, but her eyes betrayed curiosity, a subtle questioning that made my heart race. Ava returned from the kitchen, her casual demeanor a stark contrast to my inner turmoil. "Everything okay here?" she asked, a note of suspicion creeping into her voice. I nodded vigorously, hiding the tremor in my hands. The next moment, a loud knock came from the apartment door. My stomach dropped. I hadn't expected anyone else. Panic surged, and I froze. Ava moved toward the door, and my mind raced. Should I intervene? Should I risk revealing my secret to prevent suspicion? The adrenaline coursing through me made my hands shake uncontrollably. The knock was repeated, louder this time. Ava frowned. "I'll see who it is," she said. I felt trapped, caught between the mounting physical evidence of my pregnancy and the imminent possibility of exposure. I glanced at the mirror one last time before she left the room. My reflection seemed almost accusatory, highlighting the impossible duality I was trying to conceal. This was it. The tension had reached its peak. One more misstep, one more glance, one more suspicion, and everything would unravel. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The suspense was unbearable, but I knew I had to remain composed. The life growing within me, the secret identity I had cultivated, and the impossible transformation I had endured all depended on my ability to navigate this moment without faltering. And as Ava opened the door, the suspense escalated to an almost unbearable level. The story teetered on the edge of revelation, the climax of fear, tension, and transformation just beginning. The moment Ava opened the door, my heart jumped into my throat. Standing there was not only Melissa, but also her younger brother, a stranger to me, who had insisted on tagging along last minute. My mind raced. Another pair of eyes, another chance for my secret to be exposed. Ava greeted them cheerfully, unaware of my mounting panic. I forced a smile and straightened my dress, careful to position my hands subtly over my abdomen. Each movement was a negotiation between concealment and composure, and every second felt like a lifetime. Melissa stepped inside, glancing at me with her perceptive eyes. "You look different today," she said lightly, a teasing tone that made my blood run cold. I laughed nervously, hoping the sound masked the fear threading through my chest. "Just trying something new," I murmured, my voice slightly higher than normal, betraying more femininity than I intended. Her brother wandered into the living room, curious and oblivious to the tension in the air. I shifted slightly, aware of the growing curve of my abdomen pressing against the dress. Panic gnawed at me. Any movement, any slip, could reveal the pregnancy I was desperately trying to hide. Ava was distracted by small talk, giving me a few precious minutes to regain control. I excused myself to the kitchen, ostensibly to grab drinks. Every step was deliberate, a delicate balance in high heels that felt suddenly precarious. I barely breathed, praying that no one would notice the unmistakable swell of my stomach. As I returned with glasses of water, Melissa's eyes followed me with unnerving focus. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked casually, yet I caught the subtle suspicion in her gaze. My mind scrambled for explanations, tiredness, stress, maybe even diet, but none seemed convincing enough. I nodded quickly, forcing a smile, hoping it would suffice. Just as I thought I had managed the situation, a sudden cramp hit me sharply in my abdomen. I froze mid-step, gripping the counter for support. The pain was unmistakable, a visceral reminder that my body had irrevocably changed. Melissa tilted her head, her expression sharpening. "Maybe you should sit down," she suggested, concern dripping from every word. Ava, still distracted in the living room, glanced toward the kitchen. Her brow furrowed slightly, sensing something was off. I tried to laugh it off, but the trembling in my hands betrayed the truth I was desperately trying to hide. My pulse raced, the adrenaline making it almost impossible to think clearly. Then, as if the universe wanted to test me further, I heard a knock at the door again. This time it was a delivery, flowers for Ava, her name printed neatly on the card. The courier held the bouquet with one hand, the other reaching for the clipboard to confirm delivery. I froze, aware that any sudden movement could expose my belly or betray my anxiety. Ava answered the door, chatting with the courier, while I tried to remain invisible, sliding slightly behind the counter. Melissa's brother noticed the tension in my posture and gave a curious glance. I smiled, a strained and forced gesture, hoping to redirect his attention. The delivery ended, and the apartment finally settled into a brief calm. But the tension was far from over. My body was betraying me, the cramping and swelling impossible to conceal entirely. I retreated to the bathroom, needing a moment to collect myself. The mirror reflected an impossible duality, the feminized features I had cultivated, the unmistakable signs of pregnancy, and the fear etched in my expression. I pressed a hand to my belly, feeling the life inside me, the secret that had transformed my existence. It was both thrilling and terrifying. This secret, once a private indulgence, had now become an unstoppable reality that demanded attention, care, and concealment at all costs. Returning to the living room, I tried to engage with conversation, laughter forced but necessary. Melissa's curiosity was palpable, her glances now persistent. My body ached with the effort of hiding, every muscle tense, every movement measured. I realized that one misstep could unravel months of careful secrecy. Ava eventually called for everyone to sit for snacks. I positioned myself strategically at the end of the couch, hoping to minimize visibility of my abdomen. The pregnancy, the cross-dressing, and the constant fear of exposure had merged into a high-stakes performance, and I was the unwilling star. Suddenly, Melissa leaned slightly forward, her eyes narrowing. "You've been different lately. Are you sure everything's okay?" she asked, a subtle edge of suspicion in her tone.
My throat went dry.
I had rehearsed explanations, but none seemed adequate under her scrutinizing gaze. Ava glanced between us, sensing the shift in mood. "What do you mean?" she asked. My pulse raced. Every second felt suspended in time. I forced a smile, trying to deflect, but the cramping in my abdomen made it impossible to remain fully composed. The room seemed to shrink around me. Every glance, every word, every gesture was a potential revelation. The suspense had reached a fever pitch, and I realized that my carefully maintained balance was on the verge of collapse. And then, in that suspended moment, Melissa's curiosity edged dangerously close to the truth. My body, my secret, my impossible reality, all were on the brink of exposure. The climax of fear, suspense, and emotional tension had begun in earnest. The apartment had become a pressure cooker of nerves and tension. Every laugh, every gesture, every glance from Melissa or her brother felt like a ticking time bomb. My body ached from the effort of keeping my secret hidden, and the swelling in my abdomen made every movement a subtle, perilous risk. Ava had grown increasingly attentive, her intuition sharper than ever. She asked casual questions that seemed innocent but carried undercurrents of suspicion. "Are you feeling well?" she asked, her eyes scanning me in a way that made my heart stutter. I smiled nervously, clutching my dress at my sides to obscure the undeniable curve. "Just tired, I guess," I murmured, my voice slightly strained, higher than usual. Melissa's glances had shifted from casual curiosity to a piercing focus. She leaned closer, her tone deceptively light. "You've been different lately." "Really different," she said. My chest tightened. Every second I remained in the room was a balancing act, every word a calculated risk. Suddenly, a loud thud came from the kitchen. My pulse spiked as I realized that Ava's cat had knocked over a stack of dishes. In that instant, I instinctively moved forward to catch a plate, the motion drawing attention to my abdomen. Melissa's eyes widened just slightly, enough to ignite a surge of panic. I forced a laugh, hoping it appeared casual. Ava, meanwhile, had walked over to the kitchen, distracted by the mess. I pressed my hands over my stomach, feeling the swell beneath my fingers. The secret, the pregnancy, the impossible transformation, was no longer something I could take lightly. Every glance, every second, every subtle shift in posture could give it away. Melissa's brother, curious and oblivious, tilted his head. "You've changed," he murmured, the words innocuous, but carrying an edge of perceptiveness. I swallowed hard, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The sweat on my palms was unmistakable. I forced a tight smile and adjusted my posture, hoping to divert attention. Then Ava returned, carrying a fresh glass of water for me. She glanced at me, a subtle frown forming. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked, her tone soft but probing. Panic surged. Should I reveal anything? Could I risk the truth? The suspense was unbearable. Melissa's eyes followed me, sharper now than ever. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" she asked softly, leaning forward slightly. My heart stopped. I froze mid-step, the weight of my abdomen pressing against my dress, impossible to disguise completely. The room seemed to constrict around me. Every person, every gaze, every sound was amplified. I felt the pressure of months of secrecy and transformation pressing down. The cramping in my stomach intensified, a visceral reminder that my body was no longer my own, that the pregnancy was real, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. In a desperate attempt to regain control, I excused myself, retreating to the bathroom. The mirror reflected the duality of my existence, the feminized features, the swelling abdomen, the delicate curves, and the fear etched into my expression. I pressed a hand to my stomach, feeling the life inside me, the secret that had irrevocably changed everything. Returning to the living room, I tried to appear composed. Melissa's gaze followed me like a hawk, and Ava's subtle frown never left her face. Every movement, every word was a performance, a dance on the knife edge of discovery. Then the symbolic moment arrived. A high heel slipped as I adjusted my position on the couch, the clicking sound echoing sharply in the room. Melissa's eyes widened, a faint smile playing at her lips. My pulse raced. Ava noticed the slight imbalance, her brow raising in concern. I caught myself just in time, steadying the heel, but the near slip had symbolically exposed the fragility of my secret. The suspense reached its zenith. Every glance from Melissa, every subtle questioning from Ava, every minor stumble or cramp made the room feel like a stage, and me the reluctant actor teetering on the edge of revelation. The pregnancy, the cross-dressing, the impossible transformation, all were moments away from exposure. And in that suspended, heart-stopping instant, the doorbell rang again. My body froze, the adrenaline coursing through me. Another visitor? Another test? I felt the tension coiling in my stomach, a mixture of fear, excitement, and vulnerability. The room held its breath. The secret teetered on the edge, poised to explode at any moment. And I, the unwilling participant in this impossible reality, realized that everything could change in the next heartbeat. The suspense was unbearable, the stakes impossibly high. The mirror, the dress, the heels, the swelling abdomen, all symbols of the delicate balance I was struggling to maintain. One wrong move, one suspicious glance, one unguarded word, and the truth would be revealed to everyone in the room. And with that, the story paused at its peak, leaving every reader and viewer on the edge, hearts pounding, minds racing, desperate to know what would happen next. The apartment had finally settled into an uneasy calm, but my heart was still racing. Every creak of the floorboards, every muffled sound from the street below, felt amplified. I pressed my hands gently over my swelling abdomen, the secret that had changed my life lying just beneath my fingertips. Each pulse, each movement reminded me of the impossible reality I was now living, pregnant, feminized, and trapped in a dual identity. Ava had retreated to the kitchen to prepare some snacks, her attention briefly diverted. Melissa lingered near the couch, her gaze sharp and knowing, a subtle smirk tugging at her lips. She had sensed that something was off, something I had been hiding, and my panic had only confirmed her suspicions. I tried to smile, to appear composed, but the tremor in my hands betrayed me. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door interrupted the tension. My heart lurched. Who could it be now? Another visitor, or perhaps someone suspicious. Ava, unsuspecting, went to answer it, leaving me exposed in the living room. The air felt thick, every second stretching like an eternity. Melissa leaned slightly closer, her eyes narrowing in a mix of curiosity and amusement. "You really are hiding something," she whispered. My throat went dry, my pulse pounding against my ears. I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow, betraying the fear coiling inside me. I glanced toward Ava, who was chatting briefly with the visitor at the door. I couldn't focus on their conversation. My entire being was tuned to Melissa's gaze. She tilted her head, studying me like a puzzle she was determined to solve. My stomach knotted. One wrong move, one misstep, and my secret would be out. Then it happened, a sudden cramp shot through my abdomen. I froze mid-breath, pressing my hands instinctively over the curve that was impossible to conceal. Melissa's eyes widened slightly, and I could almost hear her thinking, "There it is." I forced myself to smile, to laugh it off, but the pain was real, undeniable. My body was betraying me, and the world seemed dangerously close to discovering the truth. Ava returned to the living room, carrying plates of snacks, her eyes flicking between Melissa and me. I hoped she didn't notice the way my dress clung unnaturally over my abdomen, or the subtle tension in my posture. But Melissa's smirk suggested she had noticed everything. As Ava set the plates down, the apartment fell silent. The visitor, whoever they were, had already departed, leaving behind a fragile bubble of tension. I sank slightly into the couch, my body trembling from the effort of maintaining composure. Every muscle was tight, every thought consumed by the fear of exposure. Melissa's voice broke the silence, soft and teasing. "You're hiding something big, aren't you?" she said. Her words hung in the air, sharp and precise, like a scalpel cutting through my carefully maintained defenses. My mind raced. How could I explain this impossible situation?
Could I?
Or would I have to continue the act, hiding my identity, my pregnancy, my transformed body? Ava, oblivious to the intensity of the moment, smiled and chattered on, her voice blending with the subtle hum of the city outside. I wanted to respond, to confess, to reveal everything, but the fear of losing control, of losing Ava's trust, of being judged, kept my lips sealed. The minutes stretched, each one a test of endurance. Melissa's gaze followed me with relentless curiosity. My pulse quickened again as a sudden wave of nausea swept over me, a cruel reminder that my body was no longer my own. I pressed my hands to my abdomen again, feeling the life growing within, feeling the secret that had transformed everything. Then, just as I thought I might breathe again, the apartment door clicked. Someone had returned, unexpectedly. The handle turned slowly, and my heart froze. I held my breath, every nerve on edge. Melissa leaned back slightly, a knowing glint in her eyes. I realized with a jolt that my secret, everything I had tried to protect, was on the verge of being exposed. Ava looked up, startled, as the door opened. I couldn't see who it was from my angle, but the air in the room shifted. The sound of the door opening, the presence of another person, the weight of months of secrets, all collided in an instant. I pressed my hands over my stomach desperately, my pulse thundering. Melissa's eyes sparkled with anticipation. She leaned closer, whispering under her breath, "I think it's time the truth comes out." My blood ran cold. My secret, my identity, my transformed body, the pregnancy, it was all teetering on the edge. The suspense held, every heartbeat echoing loudly in my chest. Would I be discovered? Would Ava understand? Could I maintain this fragile balance a moment longer? Or was the end of my secret inevitable, a revelation that would change everything? The screen, the story, the narrative itself paused at that perfect, agonizing moment. Viewers were left holding their breath, minds racing, hearts pounding, desperate to know what would happen next. And there I sat, trembling, caught between fear and anticipation, between the life I had known and the impossible reality of the one I now inhabited. The story ended, for now, on a cliffhanger that would haunt every viewer, leaving them wondering, would my secret be discovered? And what would Ava think when she finally saw the truth? I woke up to the familiar hum of the apartment's heater, sunlight filtering lazily through the blinds. For a moment, I almost forgot I wasn't just living a normal life anymore. My body felt different, softer, fuller, unfamiliar. The tiny swell in my abdomen was impossible to ignore. 8 weeks pregnant, they said, and yet, just weeks ago, I was still me, a man with a life that didn't involve curves, dresses, or the constant worry that someone would notice. The first challenge every morning was the mirror. It had become both my confidant and tormentor. I stared at the reflection, adjusting the loose nightgown to accommodate the small bump that was rapidly making my male frame unrecognizable. My face, once angular and familiar, had softened. Cheeks that had been a point of pride were now rounded, lips fuller, and eyes larger, brighter, strangely feminine. I touched my face gently, almost afraid the person looking back at me wasn't real. My thoughts immediately turned to Ava. She didn't know everything, not yet. How could I tell her that the person she thought she knew, the boyfriend she loved, had been completely transformed? That inside me, hidden beneath the clothes, the makeup, and the gentle sway of hips I now possessed, there was still a heartbeat that had once belonged to someone else? The idea of telling her made my chest tighten, but the fear of being discovered without explanation made it even worse. I dressed carefully, selecting an outfit that could hide the curve of my abdomen while still appearing natural. A flowy blouse and high-waisted skirt were ideal. I examined the ensemble critically, checking the mirror from every angle. My hands lingered on the waistband, feeling the gentle swell beneath the fabric. It was almost intoxicating, the thrill of having a secret that no one could guess, but equally terrifying. Every step I took, every gesture I made, had to be controlled, calculated. One slip, one careless movement, and everything could unravel. Breakfast was another challenge. I moved around the small kitchen, preparing my usual cereal and coffee, aware that my movements were slower, more careful. The new weight in my abdomen changed my balance. I had to adjust my posture, the way I leaned over the counter, the way I walked across the room. Even the simplest tasks had become exercises in restraint. I laughed nervously at myself, a soft sound that made my throat feel tight. Ava would never suspect, yet the tension was unbearable. While eating, I thought about Melissa, Ava's friend who seemed almost too perceptive for her own good. She had a way of noticing tiny inconsistencies, fleeting gestures, and subtle changes in behavior. I could feel her eyes studying me even when she wasn't around. The thought alone made me shift uncomfortably in my chair. My secret life, my cross-dressing, my pregnancy, it wasn't just hidden from Ava. It was hidden from everyone, and the fear of discovery lurked in every glance, every whispered word behind my back. After breakfast, I moved to the bedroom, where my wardrobe awaited. The process of dressing and presenting myself in my feminine form was no longer a novelty, it was a necessity. I chose a pastel dress, soft and flowing, with a high waistline to conceal the growing bump. The fabric brushed against my skin, sending shivers of both fear and excitement through me. My hands lingered over my chest, feeling the changes that had taken place, the subtle curves, the softness, the undeniable femininity that had been forced upon me yet strangely embraced. Makeup was next. Foundation, blush, eyeshadow, eyeliner, each stroke a ritual, each layer a mask that transformed me further. I marveled at how the reflection staring back at me was almost unrecognizable, yet every feature felt like it belonged. I adjusted the wig, brushing it carefully, making sure no stray strands betrayed the meticulous effort. Heels completed the transformation, each step a reminder that I was walking a tightrope between two identities. The click of the heels on the hardwood floor was almost a heartbeat, echoing in the quiet apartment. I paused at the mirror, taking in the full effect. I was me, but not me. Masculinity and femininity intertwined in ways that were impossible to separate. My body was changing, evolving into something uncharted, and yet the secret was mine alone. Every nerve in my body was taut with anticipation and fear. How would Ava react if she saw me like this? If she realized the truth? I pressed my hands over my abdomen again, feeling the small, impossible life growing inside me. My chest tightened with both awe and panic. The day moved slowly. Every interaction, even mundane ones, carried potential peril. A neighbor passed by the window, their glance lingering just a fraction too long. Melissa had called earlier, teasingly asking when we could hang out. I had smiled, deflecting, hiding the nervous tremor in my voice. My secret had become a silent companion, following me through every task, every movement, every interaction. By afternoon, the physical sensations of pregnancy made themselves known. Small cramps, subtle pressure, waves of fatigue. It was all new, all impossible, and all terrifying. I sank into the couch, curling slightly to relieve the pressure, my hands instinctively guarding my secret. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet there was a thrill in this duality. The risk, the concealment, the transformation, It all made me hyper-aware of my body, every shift, every curve, every heartbeat. Evenings brought Ava home. Her presence was comforting, yet terrifying. Every smile, every question, every touch had the potential to reveal what I was desperately trying to conceal. I moved carefully, laughed lightly, and avoided physical proximity that might reveal the swelling in my abdomen. Melissa was visiting, too, and her teasing glances made my heart race. Each remark about appearance, each compliment, each sidelong glance became a test. Could I maintain this facade a moment longer? And then, as night fell, the first truly suspenseful moment arrived. Ava excused herself to answer a phone call, leaving Melissa and me alone. She leaned back on the couch, smirking knowingly. "You're hiding something," she murmured softly. My pulse skyrocketed. One small mistake, one slip of composure, and she would know everything. My hands trembled as I pressed them against my dress, instinctively covering the evidence. The thrill and fear collided, sharp and intoxicating, leaving me breathless. I realized then that my life had changed entirely. No longer was I just a man who occasionally cross-dressed in secret. I was someone living on the edge of discovery, balancing fear and desire, wrestling with identity and transformation, and carrying a secret so impossible that it could shatter every relationship, every expectation, every semblance of normalcy I had left. And as Melissa's eyes held mine, as the room seemed to shrink around me, I understood. The suspense was only beginning. The stakes were higher than ever, and the events that would follow could change everything. My secret was fragile, and my life was teetering on the edge. Melissa's eyes lingered on me longer than seemed polite. Her smirk wasn't cruel, but it carried an unsettling weight, as if she knew more than she let on. My pulse hammered in my chest, and I pressed my hands over my abdomen instinctively, the small swell beneath my dress a secret I could no longer take for granted. Every second felt suspended, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if my carefully built facade would crumble. "You're acting different," Melissa murmured, tilting her head. Her voice was soft, teasing, yet loaded with curiosity. My heart skipped. I forced a laugh, keeping my tone light. "Different?
Me?
I think you're imagining things." She leaned closer, lowering her voice, almost conspiratorially. "No, I know you're hiding something. I can see it." I froze, unable to mask the sudden tightening in my chest. My mind raced through every possible explanation, every excuse I could use, but none of them sounded convincing. I wasn't just cross-dressing. I was carrying a secret that defied reality itself. 8 weeks pregnant. A man no more, transformed into a woman whose curves, dress, and delicate voice screamed femininity. And now Melissa was dangerously close to discovering it all. You're probably just overthinking," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. My hands clutched the fabric of my dress, fingers tightening on the soft material. My legs, crossed nervously, shifted under the table, the subtle swell of my abdomen brushing against the waistband. Every movement felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. Melissa's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Maybe," she said, leaning back casually, but her gaze never wavered. "Or maybe you just like living on the edge. Don't you?" The word struck me like a lightning bolt. She wasn't accusing me outright, but the implication was clear. She suspected something. And the thought of anyone, Melissa, Ava, anyone seeing the truth of my transformation, seeing the evidence of my pregnancy, made my stomach churn. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Maybe I do," I whispered, the tremor in my voice betraying me. Melissa laughed softly, a sound that was warm but unsettling. "Well," she said, standing and stretching slowly, "keep your little secrets for now. But I'll be watching." I exhaled slowly once she left the room, collapsing into the couch with my head in my hands. The adrenaline coursing through me left me trembling. I was caught between two worlds, the one I had carefully crafted, feminine and secret, and the old life that now seemed impossibly distant. Every tick of the clock reminded me that the next near discovery could come at any moment, and the stakes were higher than ever. Morning arrived, and with it came the challenge of maintaining normalcy. Ava had gone out for errands, leaving me alone with the oppressive knowledge that Melissa might have mentioned her suspicions in passing. I moved around the apartment cautiously, performing mundane tasks, making coffee, washing dishes, adjusting my skirt, but every action carried weight. The bump in my abdomen was growing, more visible with each passing day, and the discomfort of heels and the soft confines of my dress reminded me that my secret was fragile. I approached the mirror again, examining my reflection. My feminine form stared back at me, curves that were impossibly new, a delicate waistline, and the soft swell of a belly that could no longer be ignored. I traced the lines of my body with shaking fingers, marveling at how much had changed in such a short time. There was excitement, yes, but also fear. Fear that Ava would notice. Fear that Melissa might expose me. Fear that I might not be able to control the secret any longer. The front door clicked, signaling Ava's early return. My heart raced. I quickly crossed to the closet, clutching a cardigan to help conceal my stomach. Every second stretched, my pulse thundering in my ears. She stepped inside, humming lightly, oblivious to the panic I felt. "Hey," Ava said brightly. "I thought I'd be home a bit later. Did you sleep well?" I forced a smile, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah, just fine. You?" Her gaze lingered on me for a beat too long. I don't know. You look different." I froze, my mind scrambling. Different? Was it the dress, the way I carried myself, or the impossible truth beneath it all? I pressed my hands lightly over my stomach, hoping to convey nothing. "Different how?" I asked, voice casual, heart racing. Ava shrugged, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I can't say. You just look different. But good different, I guess." Relief washed over me, mingled with terror. She hadn't noticed, yet, but the awareness of how close she had come made my knees weak. I knew this facade could only last so long, and that each passing day brought the risk of exposure closer. By nightfall, the tension had built to a breaking point. Melissa had stopped by again unexpectedly, citing just wanting to hang out. I tried to remain composed, moving delicately in my heels, adjusting my dress each time she glanced in my direction. The conversation was light on the surface, but every word carried the weight of potential discovery. Melissa leaned casually against the doorframe, her eyes flicking to the slight swell in my abdomen. "You're hiding something," she said softly, almost a whisper. "I can see it, you know, but I won't say a word yet." I froze, caught mid-step, my pulse hammering like a drum. My mind screamed at me to keep still, to breathe slowly, to avoid any movement that might reveal the impossible secret. My hands clutched the fabric over my stomach, trembling. I realized then that living this double life wasn't just about appearance. It was about survival, about secrecy, and about the fragile trust that hung by a thread. Melissa's smirk deepened, and she left the room, leaving me to collapse into the couch, trembling with adrenaline and fear. The night stretched on, every shadow, every creak of the apartment, magnifying the tension. I knew the real challenge was just beginning, the moment when the secret could no longer be contained. And as I lay there, hands still pressed against my softening body, I understood. The next time someone looked too closely, heard too much, or noticed one small detail, everything could change forever. The apartment felt smaller somehow, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, the distant traffic outside, was amplified, turning ordinary noise into potential alarms. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I had spent weeks balancing this impossible secret, navigating my transformed body, concealing my pregnancy, and tiptoeing around Ava and Melissa alike. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the risk of discovery loomed closer than ever. Melissa had returned unexpectedly, claiming she had forgotten her charger. The sly smile she wore made my stomach churn. I could feel her eyes tracing the soft curve of my abdomen beneath the dress, the subtle swell of my hips, the delicate lines of my feminized frame. Every step I took, every gesture I made, had to be calculated, precise. One wrong move, and everything would shatter. I tried to keep conversation light, laughing at her jokes, nodding at her stories, all while my mind screamed at me to remain still, to avoid any sudden movement. But the tension was unbearable. Every glance from her felt like a probe, searching for the truth. I could feel sweat pricking my brow, hands trembling as I held my dress in place. My secret, the one thing I had guarded so fiercely, felt fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a table. Melissa leaned closer, lowering her voice. You know, you're really good at hiding things. But even the best hiding spots have cracks. The words cut through me like ice. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure, but my legs felt weak beneath the soft sway of my dress. My fingers instinctively pressed against the small bump of my abdomen. She was too close, too perceptive, and I was dangerously exposed. Then, as if the universe itself had conspired to heighten my anxiety, the door clicked open.
Ava.
My heart leapt into my throat. She was home early, a shopping bag in her hand, humming lightly. I froze, caught mid-step, hands clutching the dress over my stomach. The sudden presence of the person I loved and feared most made every nerve in my body scream. Ava's eyes widened slightly as she took in the scene. Melissa's mischievous smirk didn't help. "What's going on here?" she asked lightly, but her gaze flickered to me, lingering a fraction too long. I tried to speak, to explain, but my voice caught in my throat. My hands pressed tighter over my stomach, heart hammering, every second stretching like an eternity. The air between us felt electric, charged with unspoken truths. Melissa's grin deepened, sensing the chaos, while Ava's curiosity sharpened, her brow furrowing slightly. A small crash from the kitchen, my fault, the mug slipping from my hand, made everyone jump. I bent quickly to retrieve it, the movement revealing just enough of my abdomen for Ava to notice. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. "Wait, what?" I tried to laugh nervously, covering with a joke, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. Nothing. Just, words failed me. The secret that had been mine alone, carefully guarded, was now exposed to the two people whose reactions mattered most. I could feel my body trembling, not just from fear, but from the strange, surreal reality of what had happened. I was no longer a man. I was pregnant. And now everyone knew, at least partially, something I couldn't fully explain. Melissa stepped back, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. "Looks like your little secret isn't so secret anymore," she said softly, almost teasingly. Ava's gaze stayed locked on me, a mix of shock, confusion, and concern. She stepped closer, hand reaching tentatively toward my abdomen. Is this?" Her voice faltered, uncertainty coloring each word. I swallowed hard, trying to form words, but panic had seized me. My mind raced through explanations, excuses, anything that could make sense of this impossible situation. But deep down, I knew no explanation would suffice. How could I tell her that I, the man she loved, had transformed into this? That my body had betrayed both of us, creating life that was impossible, unnatural? Melissa's presence only heightened the tension. She seemed almost amused, like she had been waiting for this moment, enjoying the chaos that now enveloped us. "Well," she prodded gently, eyes gleaming. "Are you going to explain? Or are we just going to sit here staring?" I felt cornered, trapped between the woman who might understand and the one who could never forgive, or maybe never comprehend. My pulse raced, every muscle taut with fear and anticipation. I pressed my hands over my stomach, feeling the small, impossible life within me. It was real, undeniable, and yet utterly inconceivable. Ava's expression shifted slowly, from shock to something softer, a tentative concern. "I don't understand," she whispered, voice trembling. How is this possible?" I took a shaky breath, trying to summon courage, to force words through the knot of panic in my throat. "I don't know," I admitted finally. "I don't know how it happened, but please, you have to believe me. I'm still me." Melissa interrupted with a laugh, low and knowing. "Oh, it's happening," she said, almost gleefully. "The big reveal. I told you, the cracks were showing." I sank to the couch, hands still clutching my abdomen, feeling utterly exposed, vulnerable in a way I had never experienced. The suspense had reached its peak, every secret laid bare, yet the full consequences were still unknown. Would Ava accept this new reality? Would she recoil? And what of Melissa, who seemed to hold this revelation like a weapon, ready to twist it for her own amusement? The room felt impossibly small, suffocating, electric. I realized then that the true climax was not the secret itself, but the emotional, psychological storm that followed. Every glance, every word, every breath carried the potential to shatter the fragile balance I had tried to maintain. And as Ava reached slowly toward me again, the suspense hung in the air like a storm about to break. I could feel the trembling of my body, the rapid beating of my heart, the overwhelming realization that nothing would ever be the same.